We are live.
Good evening and welcome to the April 21st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. If we can have a roll call, please.
Yes, Chair Gutierrez,
Here,
Vice Chair Clow,
Here.
Commissioner Hinojos Fall,
Here.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Toya.
Here.
Thank you. And I understand that Commissioners Faulkner, Hava, and Setenia are excused. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
thank you so much. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Toya, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of course. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Toya. Approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff?
There are none, Chair.
Any changes from the commission?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. If I can get a second, please.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Lawrence, second by Commissioner Hinojos Fall. If we can have a roll call, please.
Vice Chair Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Hinojos Fall,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yep.
and Commissioner Toya.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Next, we have appointment of secretary. I want to thank everybody that put their name in for secretary. And I'm going to appoint Commissioner Lawrence as secretary for the commission. So thank you all, and thank you, Commissioner Secretary Lawrence. Moving on to approval of minutes, we have none. Findings, conclusions, none. Old business, none. And gets us to H, our study session, and the role of the Planning Commission as its subcommittee and its subcommittees. Mr.
Thank you. I hope this comes out. I usually don't use PowerPoint. This is actually going to be like my second time ever. I usually code everything in Adobe Animate CC, so this is kind of boring. Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
How's that?
Yes.
Okay. For tonight's training, what we're going to do is my presentation will go over the role of the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission Subcommittee, the Planning Commission Authority, conditions of approval, and I'll touch upon the different types of development types that we usually see. Chapter 14 establishes the Planning Commission by ordinance. The governing body hereby delegates its authority for planning within the planning jurisdiction of the city is set forth in section 319(1) MSA, except for those powers retained by the governing body in the city of Santa Fe. These can include ordinances, resolutions, those areas that are specifically spelled out in chapter 14. The Planning Commission is the principal city land use administrative board and has the powers and duties set forth in table 14.2.1-1, which is the table that it has everything that we're going over now to be carried out in accordance with the terms of chapter 14. So that table sort of aggregates what's in writing. And what it says is that the Planning Commission shall make recommendations to the Planning Commission regarding long-range policy recommendations that set forth in subsection 14.2.3(c)(6). Did I go over? No. This is for the subcommittee, and may provide administrative and government officials of the city recommendations for public improvements and the financing of such improvements. Public officials shall, upon request, furnish to the planning commission within a reasonable time such as available information as it may require for its work. And it may report and make recommendations relating to the development of the city to public officials and agencies, public utilities, civic education, professional and other organizations and citizens with regard to management, land use, transportation, development review procedures, urban design and capital improvements, and neighborhood and community planning and other community issues as they relate to long-range planning, long-term planning. With regard to the
Dan,
planning
can you go
commission's
back?
authority,
Can you go
Sure.
back? I'm confused on the last one. You moved to the subcommittee.
yes,
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm basically just going over the index that I started first. It's a pretty short presentation. I figure we'll be going into a lot of questions and answers later on. With regard to the planning commission's authority, you have the review and decision-making authority over development plans, over subdivision plats, and telecommunication facilities, but not all of them, because those telecommunication facilities that are in the historic district go to the historic board. And then we do have telecommunication facilities that are reviewed administratively. So you just have those that can't be reviewed administratively or do not play a part or being otherwise approved by the H board. You have amendments, you have approval over amendments and modification of approved plans. And these include time extensions, which this body has seen, plat restrictions or other matters previously approved by the planning commission. It's not uncommon to see an applicant who has had a condition over long periods of time come back to the planning commission to either get a variance to that condition or to try and eliminate that condition altogether because things have changed, maybe the code has changed. These can come back to the planning commission even though you weren't the original body that or the original group within that body that approved it. You still have the authority to make those changes. You also have variance and waivers authority to the escarpment overlay district, terrain management, Santa Fe Homes program, infrastructure design criteria, waivers for development in special flood hazard areas, waivers to design criteria for retail over 30,000 square feet, and telecommunication waivers. The 30,000 square foot waiver is typically the big box. So if something like the mall were to have come in, that would go through a big box or a big facility. There are special conditions within there that aren't variances. There are more waivers. Similar to the telecommunication ordinance, which can waive various aspects of chapter 14 and the telecommunication standards. And you have authority over appeals, which are only final actions of the land use director, which apply to development plans, lot splits, terrain management, escarpment overlay districts, and final actions of the floodplain administrator. Those are very specific. Otherwise, appeals would also go to the Board of Adjustment if they're dealing with construction and other things that they have authority over. You also make recommendations to the governing body relevant to ordinances, resolution, annexations, general plan amendments, rezoning, and most amendments to chapter 14. We wouldn't be taking an amendment of chapter 14 related to historic board or maybe the archaeological review committee. Those would go to another body that is more appropriate to review those changes. Also, there are some variances and special use permits that this body won't see because they will also go to the Board of Adjustment. So your authority is for variances again, and special use permits are only if it's tied to a development plan or a subdivision. Otherwise, you won't see it. Regarding conditions of approval, chapter 14 it's a very large collection of ordinances that are codified into a unified chapter and integrated within the city code. And within the city code, you're going to have areas that the water company is going to look at, that the sewer department's going to look at, various areas of public works are going to look at, as well as chapter 14 with the different divisions. We have the current planning division, you have the technical review division, you have the building department, you have the historic division. All of these divisions and departments play a part in reviewing the code as a development review team for every given application that comes forward to the planning commission. So you get the collection of reviews aggregated into one report where we make those recommendations to you. Staff conditions are usually minor deficiencies or deviations that require compliance to the infrastructure and or design criteria of the code. And we can usually address these minor differences or deviations as conditions of approval during the final phase of an application, such as prior to recording the plat, prior to recording the development plan. Some of them can be done prior to a construction permit. You'll often see that the fire marshal will always provide conditions that apply mainly to construction as opposed to prior to the development being approved. So we use those conditions of approval to make whole the application or to trigger certain aspects of conditions at various times and stages of the development plan process. The Planning Commission may specify conditions of approval that are necessary to accomplish the proper development of the area and to implement the policies of the general plan. And these are specific to development plans and special use permits. And there's a range of categories that you can fit conditions within those categories to help you process the development plan or the special use permit so that it meets these goals and policies. Most of the time we try and put those conditions in the packet material. A lot of the times when we're dealing with a seasoned committee, most of the committee members know where to go within chapter 14 to actually see which category that they can place a condition if they feel that to be necessary. Otherwise, those are the only areas where conditions are typically put into place. There are a couple types of development plans. You have the subdivision development plan, which are triggered in an R7 through R10, R12, R21, and R29 residential districts. These require development plans, and they're going to require the design criteria to be submitted along with your basic subdivision plat. And that will include your setbacks, your heights, some of the design criteria. Caja de Oro was a good example of the subdivision development plan that the Planning Commission saw recently that will be coming forward again, where you sent it back for a redesign. And you have that authority to do so if it didn't meet those goals as previously mentioned. Development plans may be broken into preliminary and final review for a decision. They don't have to, but they can be. It's highly unlikely that an applicant is going to provide an application that is so grossly under performing that the staff would recommend preliminary approval. We usually try and discourage the application from moving forward if that's the case. But if they're insistent, we will recommend a preliminary approval if it's at that preliminary stage. Normally, a preliminary development plan can go as a development plan, which would include both your preliminary and final aspect of that development plan because it's at a final stage. Development plans will include your existing and new structures, your grading, your landscaping, your lighting, your pedestrian and vehicular circulation, your parking, your loading facilities. There's all kinds of elements that make up that development plan as you start thinking about construction from subsurface all the way to vertical construction of those buildings. And that includes just about everything that we have to look at in every department that would play a part in reviewing that application. So that's pretty much a development plan. And as that concludes my presentation so that Pat can go and talk about her parts.
Thank you, Dan. And before we move on to Pat, questions from the commission?
I have a question.
Secretary Lawrence, followed by Commissioner Hinojosa's fall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be quick. Dan, I just wanted to find out if you would be able to send out your slides to the commission after this meeting.
I will.
Thank you. That was all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Hinojosa's fall.
That was my question as well. Thank you.
Other commissioners? Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so we will move on to Pat's presentation.
Okay. Dan, can you enable screen sharing, please?
Mr. Chair, if I may apologize.
Yes.
Dan, can we also send them the link to MuniCode? So
I can.
for people that don't, yeah, thank you. So that you all can, view the code electronically. The city clerk as well. I don't want to burden them unless we have to, but it is possible to get a hard copy of the code as well from the city clerk. If you would like that. The digital version is pretty easy to manage, but it's hard to flip back and forth and reference like you could a hard copy document. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Are we good? Can I start?
Yep.
Can you see that? Okay. So there we go. Planning question. All right. So if there's other things that you'd like to ask me about, you are more than welcome to, but these are sort of the main topics: Open Meetings Act, ex parte communication, the authority of the commission, which Dan already covered. I'd say pretty much everything you need to know. Robert's rules, which we do follow with a couple exceptions. There are city protocols that are slightly different. And then inspection of public records acts. So Open Meetings Act is a state law. And basically it says that any quorum of a public commission, which this is, must be advertised beforehand and the public must be invited. That's why this study session is public. And that's why all our meetings are noticed so far ahead of time. All actions must be noticed at least 72 hours ahead of time. We have additional requirements for this committee, which is why our agendas come out so much earlier than 72 hours. A rolling quorum is also not allowed. So a rolling quorum is if, let's say one member were to talk to every other member about a specific item, even though it wasn't all at the same time, it would end up being a quorum. Or group email chains or group texts between more than a quorum, so 5 or more members of this committee. So pretty much any conversation between members needs to happen in a public meeting unless it's 4 or fewer members. It does not apply to communications with staff. So staff can email all of you. It is better if you have a question or a comment or want to more information for you to comment directly to the staff and not to all of the commissioners, because that does create a quorum issue. That pretty much covers that. Ex parte communications. I don't know if the public contacts you directly outside of meetings, but they should not. So when the Planning Commission acts as a decision maker on matters affecting people's property interests, board members must be and also must appear to be impartial. So any conflict of interest or apparent conflict of interest must be disclosed prior to the hearing. And then if there is an actual conflict of interest, which you all determine, to yourself, if there's a conflict of interest, then that member must recuse themselves. And they cannot participate in that item in any way. If we were meeting in person, you would leave the actual room. If we're meeting online, pretty much you sign out or get placed in the participant room until that item is over. So if you are contacted by a member of the public, don't engage with them. I think I have more of this on the next slide. But okay, so decisions of this commission must be based upon evidence and testimony presented at the public hearing. So everything that goes into the packet is part of that. The packet is available to the public. It's available at the public hearing. It's online through PrimeGov. And that's to make sure that all members are basing their decision on the same information. So you can't do your own research. You can't communicate with neighborhood groups. You can't communicate with developers. You can't do your own site visits. Historic Board does do site visits as a group. If this group decided that there was something they needed to see, something y'all needed to see in person, you can decide that, but it has to be noticed as a public meeting, and it has to follow all the other rules. So it would need a lot of lead time in order to get that out as a notice of public meeting. So yeah, and even though it seems like you should be able to do your own research on, whatever topic comes up, it really should be limited to the matters, the information that is presented at the public hearing. So you're welcome to, to ask staff for clarifications that they would then present at the public hearing for everyone. But it's really important that you all are working off of the same information, and that information is impartial. If you do get emails or phone calls from members of the public about information, don't reply to them for sure, but you can forward them to me, or you can forward them to other staff. I reply to emails for governing body members all the time saying, like, thank you for your interest. This is how you can participate officially in the public hearing at the public comment or through written comment to all the commissioners. And that way, they don't think you're ignoring them, which you're not. You're following the rules. So I'm happy to do that if you all get emails from constituents. So I don't think that you do, but if you do, feel free to just forward them to me. So keeping with that, in legislative matters, members can speak to the public. So we're probably going to have some more legislation come through. You can talk to the public on that. But with adjudications, so when citizens ask for a certain privilege or approval for a project, which is any land use case, be it a plat or a development plan or a subdivision or anything, members cannot talk to the public, the applicant, or the neighborhood. Again, no outside research or site visits. All information must be on the record. No attending ENNs unless they're in your neighborhood. If there's a case that concerns you as a citizen, you're welcome to participate in that process as an ENN, in the ENN. But when it comes to planning commission, you have to recuse yourself, and you can't be involved as a commissioner, and you can't try to influence that as a commissioner. That makes sense. Again, conflict of interest, you can't participate in items that would benefit you or your business, family member or their business, or benefit a civic or religious group that you're involved in. Like if it was your church that you go to, or if you were a Mason and that group was particularly impacted by this case, you would need to recuse yourself. If there's a case involving your neighborhood and say like your neighborhood is the south side and it involves thousands of people, that's an exception to conflict of interest, because that's everyone. If the, you know, the neighborhood is the city, clearly that would disqualify everyone. But if it impacts a small number of people and you're one of them or only you, then you can't communicate, then you can't participate, sorry. If you do recuse yourself, leave the room, wait for the item to be done. Someone will tell you when it's done. Okay, so Dan touched on the authority of the committee, of the commission, sorry. The main thing is that some items you are doing final decisions on, and some items you are recommending approval or denial to the governing body. See, final decisions come through this commission for development plans and subdivision plats, amendments and modifications of approved plans, and variances and special use permits of some kinds. And when they get on the, when you get the reports, you know, the sample motions will say approve or deny on those. It's also in the code. 14-2 is where the authorities are. And then this commission recommends approval or denial to governing body for general plan amendments and rezonings. You know this, you've seen plenty of those. And then also proposed amendments to chapter 14, which is what the daycare, why the daycare ordinance came through. And we'll probably have another one coming through in the next couple months. So what you can consider, Dan also sort of touched on this, you can consider all applicable criteria, exception criteria, design standards, whatever is in the code usually spells out pretty clearly, and the staff in the reports usually does a very good job of laying out, these are the factors, this is what you consider. You can consider the general plan if it's relevant, and then any deviations from those criteria or any deviation from the findings of facts, if they are written up ahead of time, should be specifically addressed. So like when we had with the case with Lee last time, when we had a few changes, the findings of facts, just make sure that you spell them out. And especially if it's something that, say, staff writes findings of facts based on their recommendations. So if you go against staff recommendations, which you are totally allowed to do, and you know, it's totally part of your job, we would just ask that you say which part of the findings you didn't approve of if they've already been written. That's just for us to be able to write them out properly. And the findings of facts are required for basically every kind of case, not for this clearly where you're just listening to things, but any vote requires a findings of fact, so that is the final word of this commission. That's the official record. Things that are not relevant, that are not to be considered, is, you know, who the applicant is. If you think they look trustworthy or not, it's not really relevant. Who opposes the application, who supports it, how many people come to testify. You're of course welcome and encouraged to listen to them and to take into account what they're saying, but the number of people in support or not in support does not have any bearing on if they meet the criteria. So you are to base your findings on the criteria and what's relevant. Also, things that are not relevant is information not on the record at the hearing, as I mentioned before. And then the last one, item should be postponed if new information requires further deliberations, there's insufficient time to hear all testimony, or additional research is required. Robert's rules. Planning Commission follows Robert's rules. There's also city rules and procedures amended in resolution 2009-20. They very much follow Robert's rules. There's just a few things about, for instance, the mayor appoints the chair. It's not voted on this committee. And a slight difference from Robert's rules is the chair votes only in case of a tie or when their vote is required to have the necessary number of members. which would be a quorum in this case, voting on the issue. That resolution is available online. I can send it to you if you want it. It exists. And then the last, it's my last slide, is inspections of public records acts. I don't think that this commission gets a lot of IPRA requests. I haven't seen any. If you do, but the public is entitled to the greatest possible information about government affairs, and they can, anyone can ask to inspect records, you know, if there are relevant communications between committee members. I don't know what people would want to see from you all. We don't have a lot of communications with you or between members that I know of, but it's a possibility that you might get some IPRA requests. You might have to see some of your emails, files. If I don't know that y'all write anything for this committee that you would have to present, but any request for IPRA documents would come through the city. So it's not something that you have to worry about. If someone does send one to you for some reason, like directly to you, you can tell them to file it through the city website, or you send it to me and I will deal with it. And that's everything I got. Hopefully that I can email this to you all also. Yeah, any questions?
I have two questions.
Yes.
Okay, so the first question is the matter of no independent investigations or site visits. I haven't done so yet, but I was thinking about driving down the South Meadows project. Am I not allowed to do that?
I mean, clearly you're allowed to drive around town if you need to go somewhere, but
it's not a place
as a-
where I would normally drive. I've never driven down there. So
Right.
I would certainly only be driving down there to look at it. So I'm not allowed to do that. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
It should be in the staff reports and in the information that you're provided, there should be enough site plans, photos, everything for you to get an idea. If there's not, in a specific case or in general, you know, feel free to let staff know and they can provide that to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the next question is, would you give an example of the legislative matters that would come out that would be
Sure.
before an individual in the Planning Commission?
Yeah, so it would pretty much only be changes to Chapter 14. We just had a change where a counselor would like to allow daycares in more zones as a matter of right without a special use permit. So that came to this board for consideration, and then y'all give a recommendation to governing body about that ordinance. There's another one coming up probably soon about junk vehicles and what the criteria will be for them to be considered nuisances, and which case they can be cited, and which case and when they're just cars that are sitting in someone's driveway. So that would be what legislatively would come before this board, changes to Chapter 14.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for Patricia? I don't see any hands, so I guess we'll move on to Director Klug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. So tonight I'm going to go over the planning initiatives and priorities for 2022. So one of the first priorities is to make the transition from Zoom meetings back to live meetings. So I just want to touch on that for a minute. So we have been directed that we will be going back after May 10th to live committee and commission meetings. And I'm working with IT right now to make sure that we in fact, back when we were contemplating going back to live meetings, like 6-8 months ago, whatever that was, we actually ordered a large order of iPads to supply to the, to deploy to the commission members and board members. So we still have those. They're being updated. And so any of you all that have not, I know there's 3 of you that don't have an iPad. I'll be orchestrating for you to get with IT and or for me to get to IT and supply you with that iPad so that you can have the cases in front of you whenever we're back live in city council chambers. And it looks like, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our first potential meeting back live will be June 2nd.
I think it might be
So
19th,
Yep.
Jason.
say that again.
May 19th.
Okay, do we have, is that right?
I believe that legislative piece will be coming then, so we would have at least one thing on the agenda.
Okay. So the city is adopting, Pat could probably speak to this better than me, but the city is changing its ordinance so that, once we're out of the emergency order, we will be allowed to have that provision for hybrid meetings if it's difficult or impossible for you to attend. For example, if you're sick or immunocompromised or, whatever, a legitimate reason, or if you're out of the country, if there's a reason why you can't attend live, we're working on a hybrid method. It does take, basically twice the staff to do that. So it is I don't know if it's, viewed as a hardship, but it definitely is functionally. So I know the city clerk and the city attorney are working on how to manage that. But in general, we will be, expected to be back in chambers at the first meeting that's scheduled after May 10th. I'd like to just stop there and ask people if they have any questions regarding that item.
I do.
Commissioner Smith.
Jason, or I'm not quite sure how we address each other. Do I call you Director Klug, or can I call you Jason, or what?
Just don't call me late for dinner. Either one's fine.
Okay. My question about the apples is the point of that for us to have all our planning commission material on a separate computer that is independent from any other computer we have, or what's the point?
Sorry, I think I understand. So the point of the iPad is so that you can have the cases in front of you digitally when you're at the dais. Does that answer your question?
No, I guess
Sorry.
what I'm saying is I'm already receiving information on my my PC.
Right.
Is there some reason I can't continue to do that? I mean, I'm not trying to be problematic. I'd
No,
rather not.
Yeah, thank you.
Jason,
No, sorry, go ahead, Pat.
There are some VPN issues with getting on the wireless at City Hall, which I'm not sure if you can do with your personal computer. You're welcome to have everything saved on your laptop if you have a laptop and you want to bring it. It was more so that if not everyone had a laptop, that you would have something that you could view the documents on. You wouldn't have to try.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Yeah, the iPads are strictly for convenience.
So they're there. They live at City Hall. We continue to receive material at home. We show up at the meeting and there's the iPad with all the material on it.
The iPad will be your device, to take with you where you need to, and then you can upload download a packet onto that iPad.
Yeah, everything would be essentially the same, except that you would also have an iPad if you would rather use that. But
Okay.
you would keep it with you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I don't know how you want to run. Is it okay if I ask for people to speak, or?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Just it gets a little hard if we start talking over each other, and if there's other questions from commissioners, if they'll just raise their hands so you can acknowledge them, or I can, either or.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Clow?
Thank you. So the iPad that we got from the city, that's pretty old, that is connected to the Wi-Fi at the city. So when we bring that in, it'll connect.
So thank you. So the other point that I apologize, I forgot to make is that commissioners that already have iPads, I just wanted to get a list of those. So I assume that everybody on the planning commission except the 3 new members has an iPad. Okay, so I see Commissioner Lawrence shaking your head. So whoever needs an iPad, we have them at IT, and they're updating those. If you have an existing iPad, we can arrange to have you or somehow have that translated or transported to IT for an update, and then we will all get that that sign-in information prior to the first meeting. This is definitely this is a process that's happening right now, so I don't have all the answers, but yeah, I think to your point, Commissioner Clow, we should arrange for everybody that has an iPad to go get it updated at IT.
Jason, if I can, we don't really know how the Wi-Fi is going to work for new devices. That they just changed how it works on our city devices. So we'll have to talk to IT before. I would say certainly download everything onto it before you get to City Hall, if possible.
Go ahead, Vice Chair Clow. You have your hand up.
I'm fine.
Oh, you're good. For the new commissioners and the old commissioners, before the pandemic, they did offer packets that were paper, if that's easier, and you want the staff to print packets. Is that something that's still doable, Director?
Yeah, that's a good question. Dan, do you have any insight on that? I mean, I could answer it, but I'm just, since Dan's been here longer.
We can make a hard copy if a planning commissioner wants it. But typically we want to stick with the digital version. It takes up a lot less resources.
We see the excitement in your face.
What's that? You're coming
We see
in
the
a little.
excitement in your face, Dan, the excitement in your face. But it is, if somebody does need a paper packet for some reason, it's doable, right? I mean, we're trying to get away from it, but it's doable.
Yeah, and it's really a question for the city clerk, because they would have to produce that, with the stamp on it that it's, that it's an official document, et cetera. Yeah, when the city's definitely moving away from that in general, and we were using iPads prior to the pandemic also. I know we were in transition, but that was definitely happening before COVID. Anyway, yeah, thank you for the question. And we can talk to city clerk about the options there. Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused because Attorney Figali said, if we download, or I inferred, if we download, you send us material for a meeting and we download it at home, then we're not worried about what's going to go on with City Hall internet. Is there additional material that would come to us during a meeting?
There shouldn't be.
So if I'm trying to keep, being an old man, I'm trying to keep things simple here. If I download everything at home, I'm going to be okay.
Yes, it is. If you forgot to download it, or you realize, oh, I only downloaded half the packet or one case, and then it would be an issue. But yes, everything that that you would need would be available days beforehand.
Righty, Commissioner Lawrence.
So I'm getting a little off topic based on this conversation, but I just thought I would take the opportunity to maybe mention that it would be useful. So first, just for the city staff records, I have been using my own personal iPad. I do not have a city one. But one thing that would be useful, especially as we return to in person, is because we access the documents online through the city portal, sometimes those documents do get updated. I always download the entire packet of documents on the Friday or Saturday and review them over the weekend. So I would just ask something for staff to keep in mind going forward is if there are any later updates to the packet, if there are corrections of typos, things like that, that we get notified as planning commissioners so that we can update our records for what we bring to the meetings. That was all that I had.
Thank you. I'm making a note of that.
Thanks.
Okay, so any more questions on that item? All righty, thank you all. There, there'll be updates to follow hopefully very quickly on that. I know that IT's they're updating the iPads as we speak. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, so moving on. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the general housing and affordability initiatives that the city is so, I think everyone in the city is concerned about. And so we had a really interesting meeting with the Housing Coalition. Was it yesterday? Anyway, to go over all of these issues, and it was a really I think it was a productive meeting. And so I'd like to just basically summarize that for you all, because I think it will be interesting, and it also will be informative about where you all fit in with that. I mean, I know you already understand in some way or another, but I just want to go over specifics so you all are getting the same information we went over yesterday, because I think it'll be valuable to you. So the mayor really wants to focus on what will it take. That's his the kind of the magic phrase. What will it take? So in this instance, what will it take to provide a spectrum and variety of housing options that will meet the current and future needs of the community? That's the big picture. That's what we want to focus on. And I think there will be various solutions oriented working groups moving forward, especially with the chapter 14 and general plan updates that I personally want the policy subcommittee, the planning commission policy subcommittee, to be one of those stakeholders and groups that's included in this brain trust to figure out what it takes to get these projects off the ground and new ones in place and preserve the quality and character of the city at the same time. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay. So I've got 4 slides here that I'm going to go over, and can you bear with me 1 second? There we go. Okay. So this is a residential development pipeline. It's 3 slides, and then the last slide will be the permitting statistics for multifamily and single family homes since actually the early 90s. But we want to focus on 2017 moving forward in particular. So what this map shows here is the units completed since 2017, 760 units with 93 affordable. And so this map is good, but it's a little bit misleading, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Because you're probably wondering, well, I know we've approved and built more than 760 units, but anyway, this is basically capturing projects that are completely done, including subdivisions. So if a subdivision won't be on here, like a single family residence subdivision won't be on here unless it's completely built out. So what you're seeing here is projects that are completely done since 2017. Some of you may recognize some of these. We have Calle Resolana, which was completed recently. That's a civic housing trust project. River Trail Loss off of Alameda, that's been in place for I think 3 or 4 years now. Capitol Flats, everybody knows. residence in apartment conversion. That was before my time, but Dan may be able to speak about that one if we need to. The Skya 3 was built in the last 2 years, and then Broadstone was built, I think, like 3.5 years ago. And then Las Saleras Senior Apartments, I think, around the same time, and Las Saleras Station. So I just wanted to give you that kind of going backwards, the projects that are actually built, and we don't have good statistics, but they're probably about a 3% vacancy right now, vacancy rate. Okay, so the next slide, thank goodness it's coming right up because my computer was running slow earlier. So this is all the projects to date that are under construction. So you can see it's 2,829 units with 239 affordable units associated with those. And you can see, for example, where's it going? Like Ross's Peak. That's why, Ross's Peak is largely built out, but it's not complete. So that's why it's on this map. So just to give some perspective, which you'll also see on the final permitting chart that I show you, that 760 unit is actually amplified by another 1,761, because they're actually, of these subdivisions that aren't complete yet, aren't completely built out and final, 1,760 some odd single family residences have been built, and some of those occupied. I can't speak to that, unfortunately, what the occupancy rate is, but anyway, so that 760 is really more like, what would that be? 2,400. I believe that's in the 2,400-2,500 range. So also a lot of these multifamily projects that you see on here, like Siler Yard, for example, Via Sendero, which we had a development plan amendment come before you all just recently. These projects are largely built out, and they have partial C of Os, and they're actually leasing. Estancias del Norte is a big single family residence subdivision on the east side. I've seen probably about a dozen houses come through for that subdivision so far. Let's see. I just want to give you the highlights, not dwell too much. But one thing I did want to talk about is some of these, the challenge that we've had, and the reason why there are so many under construction and that haven't really started, getting their finals and leasing out is just COVID, right? Supply chain and COVID during the last 2 years has slowed everything down. So, like for example, Turquesa Apartments, those permits were sitting in our office for 1.5 years just because they just weren't ready. And you all, if you've driven by there, you see that they're getting closer, but they're still under construction, and they've probably got a ways to go. For example, Gerhardt Apartments, that project started when I first started with land use, which was over 2 years ago, and they're still they're right at the they're just about complete, but they're not there yet. Anyway, just to give you just an idea of where we are, just by the numbers. So then, and we can come back to any of these if you all have questions. So then, the next slide shows
Director Klug.
Yes.
If you don't mind, Commissioner Smith has his hand up. Let me.
I apologize, Commissioner Smith. Go ahead.
Director Klug, can we get these slides as well?
Certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the third slide is residential development pipeline. So this is pre-applications and approved. Pre-applications is a little bit misleading, but what this is showing is projects that have been approved by you all and or the governing body, and also projects that have been recorded but haven't come to permit yet, or maybe are in permit, and also projects that were approved by you that are just that haven't been recorded yet. So basically, this shows everything that's been approved by the Planning Commission and or governing body. So yeah, I think, again, like, I apologize. I think this pending is not correct. I think it is The pending means that it hasn't been recorded. So, so it's around 2,600 units with, 360 some odd affordable units involved. And so, some of you, one recent project, a big single family residence project that just got approved, Vista de la Sierra. I know they are coming in for permits soon. And then, for example, another multifamily that hasn't come in yet, that's, the one that was proposed to be built right next to Turquesa in the mall parking lot in Santa Fe Place parking lot was that Escarpa multifamily project. There's a lot of little multifamily projects on here, but then there's these big single family subdivisions that we've approved recently, like Aguafina, Casa de Todos, Casa Azul, Sangre Azul, Alexander Estates. So anyway, that just gives you an idea of what's been approved but hasn't come in for permitting yet. So the last part that we don't have a map for is the projects that are still in planning that we know about, and that totals about a little bit over 2,000 units. And that would be projects, the big one is Tierra Contenta Phase 3, right? We approved the master plan for that, but they need to come back for, development plan approval. And so that's, a rough, that's again, 1,500 units max. And then another big one is Casa Verde over on Airport Road. I believe, Dan, what's the intersection there? I apologize.
Or which one?
For Casa Verde.
So Verde.
Yeah, it's the one that just came in for E&N.
Oh, that one's at Airport Road and Our Street, right across from the golf course.
Okay, thank you. And that's like 224 units. And then a conglomeration of other small single family subdivisions and several hotels that plan on converting to multifamily add up to about another 350 units. So about 2,000 that we have in the pipeline, planning to, intending to come this year or next year to the Planning Commission and or governing body if needed. So that brings us to a total of 8,200 units that are either in planning all the way through, having been constructed since 2017. So I just wanted to give you all that as just as a way to, just give you the lay of the land basically, and I'll forward these maps to you, especially for the benefit of the new commissioners. Apologize, somebody keeps texting me, so it's distracting. Sorry, go ahead.
Could we go back to the previous slide, Director?
Yeah, certainly. Mm-hmm.
And on that slide, would you put your cursor where the South Meadows project is?
Sure.
Could you locate the South Meadows project on that slide?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I mean, roughly, just roughly.
Yeah, and I do know where it is. It's right there.
Right there.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
I apologize, I shouldn't have clicked, but yeah, it's right there next to the marker for Casa Azul, right there where my cursor is.
And not too far from the Rufina subdivision.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. So the last chart that I wanted to show you all, which is really interesting, is the permitted dwelling units by type 1990 to 2024, and the 2022 to 2024 is obviously projected, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the blue line is single family residences, and the orange/red line, whatever color that is, that's the multifamily units. And so you can see right around 2018, the multifamily unit permitting really took off. And then, everything was suffering during the economic downturn. That's basically this area right here. And then in general, multifamily unit production is going up and single family unit production is going down, although, you can definitely draw a straight line through here, right? That's and then this 221 units for 2022 is actually just the units permitted so far this year. So, so this actually, we plan, I assume this number is going to, jump up a little bit and show an increase by the end of the year. So for 2020, we had 304 single family units permitted and 513 multifamily. 2021, 240 single family and 500 multifamily. And then so far in 2022, we've had 221 single family units permitted. So, I'm assuming this will be a higher number by the end of the year since we're only, barely through the first quarter. And then multifamily, they definitely come in waves, and there's a lot of prep time involved. They have to go through a lot of process with the utility companies, once you all do your work. So it takes some time for multifamilies to get to us, multifamily projects. And so actually this year we haven't permitted any so far, but there are that roughly 1,953, whatever that adds up to, that are in the pipeline that could come in for permit at any moment. So when we did this chart, we just kind of, prorated it out over 3 years, but this could definitely be, this could just like shoot right up to 1,900 this year. We don't know. But this is just to show that, the pipeline does include 1,900 units that could come in for permitting, whenever they're ready. So that's, that's something that you all aren't, so, it's not really your purview, but that's something that, that I'm definitely looking at so that we're, prepared for all those permits to come in, and we're, properly outfitted, with our operations to do so. So I just wanted to, show you that. And then do you all have any questions on this, on the housing overview?
Well, I did have a question.
Commissioner Nejo's fall, please.
Okay, so you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that the mayor's goal or desiderata was to find some balance between the development, which has to be done, without destroying the character of the city.
Correct.
Which is an issue with me. So what are we doing to make that balance? Because I don't think they're mutually exclusive. But it appears that not destroying the character of the city piece hasn't had as much weight in the deliberations as the development side. So is there a plan on how to incorporate and merge those two?
Thank you, Commissioner. I think we're all a little bit in the same boat of like, yes, we understand that needs to happen. All of us that are, dedicated to Santa Fe want it to happen. And yeah, we acknowledge that, the city does need to grow, and it will change just by the nature of time, moving forward. And obviously we want to preserve the character, and that means different things to different people, right? And Santa Fe is very diverse and interesting, and that's what I love about it. So to answer your question is, I definitely don't have that answer in my back pocket, but what I can tell you is with these, the Chapter 14 and general plan updates, and with these solutions-oriented working groups that I mentioned earlier that, you all are definitely, need to be a part of. Once we can turn the corner in land use, I'm just speaking from my own perspective as a land use director. Once we can turn the corner in land use and get, fully staffed with our management and senior planners, we definitely want to start addressing that. We want to, reach out to the community and have, stakeholder, serious stakeholder engagement, like we've done with Midtown, to understand yeah, what people want. How do we achieve this placemaking in neighborhoods and downtown? How do we preserve that character and, expand upon it and make, Santa Fe livable and sustainable and interesting and a place that everybody that's here loves, and also a place, that people from outside of Santa Fe want to come and visit and maybe move to. So yeah, I think that's all coming. And I think to your, sentiment, I believe, it can't come fast enough. I think we're all on the same page with that. And I think that's maybe the best answer I can give you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So then quickly, I've got a lot that I wanted to say actually, but I know I only was allotted 10 minutes. So I'll just go through this really quickly. And if you all have any burning questions, just we can talk about it. So the next big initiative, which I've already mentioned a few times, is the Chapter 14 update, which we completed the RFP process. We've selected a candidate for recommendation. We're meeting with them on contract negotiations, and hopefully by the end of June, middle of July, we'll have them on board and working towards starting to do their reconnaissance for the update. And just to recap, it's in three, and I know Daniel Alvarado sent you all the RFP, but just to recap, it's in 3 phases. So the first phase is diagnostic review, code hygiene, and technical corrections. And that'll be carried out in two phases. One, the first phase is really just to identify and clean up inconsistencies and just, conflicts and just, these messy little items that hang us up on just, the administration of the policy. And then the second phase will be identify and classify missing or needed improvements, modifications to conditions, et cetera. So really just, again, a diagnostic overview and code cleanup. So then, and that will prime us for phase 2, which will be, making strategic recommendations and promoting key standards and amendments that, support and achieve the planning and development priorities of the city. And so around that same time, hopefully we will have the general plan RFP out and, have that consultant on board. And so we want, I think by necessity, we really want these things to run in tandem. And I think, talking to the consultants that we've talked to, it's really, it's how a lot of cities do it actually. Like there might be this notion that not doing the general plan first is putting the cart before the horse, but I don't really think that's true necessarily. We definitely want to have the general plan update underway, during phase 2 of the code update. And then phase 3 of the code update will be once the general plan is established, the new general plan is established, then that, we'll codify or codify, however you pronounce it, those changes into Chapter 14. And by that time, we'll have a nice, clean new code that's just, easy to update and insert the changes. So just conceptually, that's how we're planning on doing it. I just wanted to give you all that overview. And then, so that's the Chapter 14. And then the general plan, I don't know if any of you all were able to tune into the budget hearings, but I think we do need to clear up the semantics. So I'd personally like to call whatever we do, I'd like to call it the general plan. And the only reason, really the only rationale for that is so we don't have to change it 500 times in the code. But it's synonymous with the comprehensive plan. A lot of cities call their general plan a growth policy. So they're even, they're talking about growth when they're naming their general plan. So, but by any name, we really want to capture the successes of the current general plan. And then with the new general plan, just given the time and where we are with the city, we don't have vast expanses of land, to regulate now. It's really not all about, but it's largely about infill. So I think the emphasis really needs to be on a dynamic growth policy that highlights in the creation and optimization of these opportunities for development of the existing, community resources, access to them, helping create a sense of placemaking and belonging. And this includes all of our known resources, our land, water, people, culture, our unique places and spaces, economic potential, and inclusion of all these things that we will talk to stakeholders about and come to conclusions on, about what we want Santa Fe to be. So, and then most importantly, this document, which I really love the current general plan. I think it's an amazing document, especially the ethical and the moral value that it has, and the foresightedness and equity. That it was already dealing with equity, back in 1999. So I think it's actually a really good document that we should learn from, and it obviously needs to be updated and refashioned. But the one thing that it didn't do well, in my opinion, is that it didn't capture very clearly attainable goals and initiatives. So with this new one, we really want to identify, the desired and attainable goals tied to a concrete implementation plan, and prospective outcomes, things that we know we want to see, and we figure out, where it takes to get from A to B and make them happen. And so as part of this, we also got funding for, we were approved for funding by the Finance Committee at the budget hearings for a neighborhood-based planning endeavor, and also downtown planning. I think those will easily fold into the general plan, among other things. The MPO, water, utilities. There are lots of facets that aren't necessarily land use based that will fold into this general plan. So I think it's the addition of this neighborhood-based planning, I think, is good. It'll basically start to assess and work to integrate the opportunities, and categorize the opportunities that we don't want to miss, and the needed support structures to increase the general prosperity and functionality of these areas, in a nutshell. So I'll stop there in case you all have any questions on that topic.
Director Cook, if you're done with the screen sharing, if you take that down also,
I
please.
apologize, sure.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Smith.
This may not be the right time to get an answer, but there's talk of the subcommittee, and then there's talk about getting us involved in this. What are the various receptacles or places of participation where individual members can either be solicited or share their interest? It may be clear to the more senior commissioners, but other than this meeting the first and third week of every month, I have no idea how I might be asked to be, or be asked to be involved, or asked if I may be involved in a particular activity.
Certainly, thank you, Commissioner. And Ms. Fagali can probably round this out, but what I'm about to say. But basically, as the planning commissioner, we do have the Planning Commission Policy Subcommittee, which is an ad hoc committee which can be made up of 4 commissioners, and we would want to work with that policy subcommittee as a stakeholder. And then the commissioners that aren't on that committee, we would provide updates from the policy subcommittee at strategically at planning at planning commission meetings, and then that would be the opportunity for you all to discuss these things and hash them out. And yeah, Pat, could you elaborate from your perspective?
I think that's probably the best outlet. I'm not sure otherwise, honestly. There's some, if you had input for the Chapter 14 rewrite, certainly we'd be interested to hear that, I think. But as a ongoing meeting, the subcommittee is the only thing I can really think of. If that was more what you were looking for.
Yeah, I guess I think the open question for myself also, Pat, is, yeah, can individual commissioners just, feed information to staff that they're interested in adding to the equation?
Yeah, I don't see any problem with that.
Okay, great. So I think, that's two avenues, I think that we've discussed, Commissioner.
Thank you. Vice Chair Clow has her hand up, and Commissioner Hinojosa, I see you raising your hand, but if you'd raise your virtual hand.
Yeah, I can't find it on my screen.
Oh, okay.
It's not present on my screen for some reason.
Is her panelist, or does she need to be, something need to happen there, Dan? If you'll take a look at that, Dan, you'll follow Vice Chair Clow.
So Jason, it sounds like it's going to take a long time, that process. If there's going to be a lot of stakeholder meetings and a lot of input from different groups, it sounds like it's going to be a process that takes a couple of years. What's envisioned in terms of how long this is going to take?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. So just for reference, my understanding is that the general plan in 1999 took 7 years from start to finish. Luckily, the general plan that we have now, I think, is actually a really good document, and and I think we can preserve a lot of it as foundational. So my thought is that this will take 3 to 5 years, hopefully 3 years if we're lucky. I think we're projecting 3 years. And the challenge is, which I think we need to, I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, but again, I think the general plan, yes, it's technically out of date, and we can, debate that all day long. But the reality is that we had a 7-year recession during, right in the middle of that, and we had COVID, at the very end of it. So a lot of those initiatives stalled out, and so maybe that's a negative way to frame it, but anyway, we weren't able to, I guess the positive way to frame it is we weren't able to complete everything that we really wanted to with the general plan because of those, two, delays, so to speak. And so in that sense, the general plan is still actually relevant, and, theoretically would be relevant for another decade potentially, although all the data points and all, that kind of thing is obviously, out of date already. So hopefully, having said that, we can base the changes strongly on what was, and the wisdom that was already, put out there with the existing general plan, and it won't take as long. I think there's also, there definitely needs to be a balance between, input by whichever stakeholder and actually, moving it forward in a productive way, right? I think we need to make sure we focus on that. And, there's lessons learned from other endeavors where, maybe it didn't go so well in that aspect or in that regard.
And is it anticipated that it will be dealt with in phases, or is it going to be not approved until it's completely done?
That's a good question, and I think maybe that's an open question. Maybe we want to consider how that happens. It seems like it would be perfectly reasonable to do it in phases. The challenge is, I think there are lots of interdependencies and interconnections with these different facets of it. So that might be a little bit challenging, but it seems like it's a reasonable idea.
And I assume all the amendments to Chapter 14 will come before the Planning Commission first for recommendations to the governing body.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be very time consuming.
Yeah, we've got a lot of big work
Say the
in front of us.
Okay.
All right, then.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hinojosa's fall.
Yes, so I was unclear. Is there or is there not a policy subcommittee already in place?
Commissioner, yes, thank you. There is the policy subcommittee in place. I believe all the Commissioner Lawrence, maybe are all the members that were on there still on the commission?
Yes.
since you're on there.
Director Klug,
Yeah.
yes, I would suggest that perhaps at a future meeting, we ask Commissioner Faulkner to speak more about it, as she's been really heading up that effort and can speak to that. The 4 commissioners who were on this, who have been on the ad hoc policy subcommittee, are all still commissioners.
And I believe that's Commissioner Faulkner, Commissioner Lawrence, Commissioner Clow, and Commissioner Satenya. It's my recollection. So we have, most recently we worked with the policy subcommittee on the cannabis legislation, and they were indispensable. I don't know, I can't think of a better word, but I was just like really honored to work with them on that. It was it was an extreme crunch as far as time and just the amount of information we had to process to get it done, under the timeline that the state gave us. And I was really, proud to be a part of that. So yes, they are functional. They're a little bit dormant. And Commissioner, Husfall, that was actually my next item, and my last item was to address those legislative and policy items that might be coming up for the policy subcommittee. So I'll jump into that unless you had another question.
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So yeah, so just quickly, things that we've talked about the policy subcommittee, potentially working on is the early neighborhood notification process that we know needs to be updated. There are a few counselors that are really intent on, making that just a better process. And then cannabis consumption, we have to, there is a timeline to opt out of consumption. And so we need the governing body on board, but we will have to be, we will have to, put a stake in the ground on that. And yeah,
Consumption areas,
what's that?
consumption areas, not just consumption. We can't opt out of consumption.
I apologize. That's I meant that, but yeah, thank you for the clarification. So yeah, consumption areas within the city and commercial consumption areas. I apologize for not being more explicit about that. And so yeah, we will have to do something. We can't just do nothing. So that's coming up. And then potentially an outdoor dining ordinance. That's something we had a bunch of outdoor dining, both in the public right of way and on private property, come online during the pandemic, just out of desperation to keep businesses open, right, and to keep the economy going from that perspective. And it turns out that everybody loves them. Imagine that. So we really want to give people a way forward with outdoor dining, and allow that possibility to flourish. That's just one small example. There's many of those kind of things that could be incorporated into the general plan and the code update. But some of these things will probably come as legislation before these updates are done, or while they're being done, because it's things that we want to get online, and then they'll be incorporated into the code subsequently, as another facet of the update. So and then last but not least, I don't want to put Dan on the spot, but something that I'm really interested in, and I want him to work with the new manager and AD and myself, is to really start to streamline the application process for development plans. I know Dan has ideas about that, and I'm hoping once the manager and AD come on, that'll give him space to really show us what he, he's the senior planner, and he has lots of background and understanding and knowledge about how that application process could work better and be streamlined. So I'd like to give him the space to do that, and I think it'll be a really helpful change to our internal procedures. And that's all I have. Thank you for enduring my presentation.
Thank you, Director. Commissioners, any questions on anything that's been presented tonight? Okay, I see none. If you do have any questions about anything, new commissioners, don't be afraid to reach out to staff and get those answered. They're very, very helpful, and I'm sure they're happy to do it. Seeing none, we'll move on. There's no new business, so staff communications.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So, going on what Director Klug just put out, I am working on some checklists that will hopefully standardize how we get those applications. So both the look and feel will be uniform and always the same. So when we get it, we know exactly where to go, what to look for. If it's not there, then it's incomplete. And that'll also, I think, help the Planning Commission as we upload those applications for your review. You will always have a very clear picture where things are and easy to look for what you're looking for, so that you get the same sort of orientation, same sort of guidelines, same sort of packet material in the right place. So you're not looking for it. You don't have to wonder where it is. Everything's going to be in its proper place. Sort of a way of automating the application process without compromising the quality of review. So.
Thank you. Any other staff communications?
Mr. Chair, no, thank you. I think I've communicated enough for one night.
Okay, thank you. Matters from the commission, commissioners? I see none. That'll be great if our first back in-person meeting is a simple one, like Patricia said it may be. Little test run. And Commissioner Hinojosa's fault will make sure that you have the raise hand function before the next meeting, because when you're raising your virtual hand, it puts you up so we can see you. When you're raising your regular hand, we don't see you. So we weren't not acknowledging you. We just couldn't see you. If the screen's so okay. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. We're adjourned, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Everybody.
Night.